Good evening and welcome to this meeting of the Arlington Board of Selectmen for December 18, 2017. We're meeting at about a little late, 5:54 p.m. in the Selectmen's Chambers, second floor Town Hall. We apologize for the late start, but traffic and such held some of us up. My name is Joe Curo, joined here by Kevin Greeley, Diane Mahan, and Dan Dunn. We're also assisted in our work this evening by our town manager, Adam Chapdelaine, town council, Doug Heim, and our board administrator, Marie Krapelka. As many of you know, I like to start the meetings with just a few words of inspiration. And I was thinking a lot this week about light. I mean, the town is nicely illuminated down in the center and up in the heights. Many of our friends and neighbors are celebrating Hanukkah, the Festival of Lights. Others are lighting their Advent wreaths right now with candles. And I know that last week on the 13th was St. Lucy's Day, which is particularly popular in Scandinavia, where the little girls come out with wreaths on their heads and candles. And it's ironic because on Thursday we hit the winter solstice, which will be the shortest day of the year. But I looked for something around this time, and there are a lot of words of hope around the solstice time. I found one that kept popping up from an unknown author. From out of darkness and cold, the light and hope return. And I found another version of this actually turned around by Desmond Tutu, which said, hope is being able to see that there is light despite all the darkness. So in our deliberations this evening, may we see light despite any darkness that may descend upon them. And we will proceed. Our first order of business, as I think just about everybody here knows, we were very sad to lose our colleague Stephen Byrne, who was with us for his last meeting 2 weeks ago. Steve served ably as our vice chair, but according to the Selectmen's Handbook, our first order of business will be to elect an interim vice chair. According to the procedures laid out in the handbook, I will preside over this proceeding. I'll ask for nominations. Once all nominations are on the floor, I'll ask for a motion to close nominations, and then we'll proceed to a vote for vice chair. So are there any nominations for the position of vice chair? Ms. Mahan.
I'd like to nominate Mr. Kevin Greeley.
Ms. Mahan nominates Mr. Greeley. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's a nomination by Ms. Mahan, seconded by Mr. Dunn. Are there any other nominations? Ms. Mahan.
Oh, if there's no other,
Mr. Greeley.
sorry.
I'd like to nominate the other two to serve as co-vice chairs.
Are there any seconds on that?
Of course not. No, thank you very much.
We get enough vice.
I'd like to move to close the nominations.
Ms. Mahan moves to close nominations. There's a second by Mr. Dunn. All those in favor of closing nominations?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Is there any discussion? Is there a motion on the floor now from the nominations before us?
I move we move to a vote.
Okay,
Second?
okay.
Do I get to deliver a campaign speech, Mr. Chairman?
Well, do you accept the nomination, Mr. Greeley?
Yeah, I accept. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Greeley does accept the
That was my
nomination.
speech.
It was moved by Ms. Mahan, seconded by Mr. Dunn, with no other nominees. All those in favor? Aye. All opposed? Congratulations, Mr. Greeley. You are now our new vice chair.
Thank you to the board members very much.
Thank you.
Do this?
What's this one? Yes. We now move on to, also as a result of the vacancy on the board, we move on to a process which is outlined in the Town Manager Act. I'd like to invite Mr. Leone to come join us at the far end.
Like really comfy.
Big boy and girls.
Yes. Big kids chairs.
As I think most folks know, there is a process that is delineated in the Town Manager Act whereby when a vacancy on the board occurs, it must be filled within 30 days of the effective date of the resignation of that member by a majority vote of the remaining members of the Board of Selectmen plus the town moderator. So we're very happy to have you join us, Mr. Leone.
Thank you.
I'd like to thank you. I'd also like to thank Mr. Greeley. When Mr. Byrne, after he submitted his notice or informed us at the last meeting of November. Mr. Gurley, as the dean of the board, who has served with most of our former selectmen, did reach out to all of them to let them know that this vacancy had occurred, and I think that was appropriate mark of respect to all those who have served there. Also like to thank the staff who helped to facilitate this process to reach out to folks who are interested. You all may know that we did discuss this process at our last meeting. I think we came to a consensus that while we have a preference for a former board member who has stood before the voters and been placed in one of these chairs, that we did want to run an open process and accept applications from interested Arlingtonians. We also stated a preference at that time. I just want to repeat that while we cannot compel this, our preference is that whomever we select to serve out for these, it'll be 6 or 7 meetings plus a special town meeting. That's what we're talking about really here, barring any emergencies. That they not seek election in the spring so as to avoid any appearance that we're trying to put our fingers on the scales of the election. Before we proceed, I want to thank now everybody who has expressed interest in this position. We had 7 applicants for the position who did submit to the board. One did subsequently withdraw after he saw how many interested candidates had come forward. And if my experience is indicative of my colleagues, there were quite a few more people in this town who expressed a willingness to step forward if their services were needed. I think you all recall that right before Thanksgiving, we went around and we really expressed our thanks for what are we thankful for here in Arlington and our homes? And I think a lot of us highlighted the volunteers in this town who step up and provide such vital service and are willing always to step up and to be there. So what we have done is we have reached out to all of the 7, now 6 applicants, and we invited each applicant to come and appear before us and make up to a 3-minute statement. Most of you are well known to us, and you've all submitted your applications in writing and your resumes. So we will ask one by one in alphabetical order that you make a statement up to 3 minutes. We will then proceed to nominations, and I can describe that process when we get there. We'll proceed to nominations and votes to fill the vacancy. And so, moving in alphabetical order, the first I'd like to invite to the microphone is Annie LaCourte, who I know is known to all of us, has served with most of this board as a former selectman and has appeared before us also in conjunction with the visual budget and as treasurer of the Arlington Education Foundation. So, Ms. LaCourte.
Yes, and also on Vision 2020. First of all, I'd just like to thank you for your consideration for inviting those of us who are former selectmen to apply. And I know you have many good choices here, and I'm really excited that some of those choices are not former selectmen and might be an interesting diversion from us old hands. What am I saying? I do believe that it's right that you're filling the seat. I know there had been some talk about whether or not it was absolutely necessary, but I think going into this particular season where you're dealing with the warrant, having a full board is important so that you can make decisions where maybe you're not seeking anonymity or unanimity. So I think that's an important point. I'd just like to remind you all, I mean, you all know me well, and you know my personality, and you've all served with me at one point or another, so I don't think I need to tell you a whole lot about that. But I'd like to remind you of my philosophy in dealing with warrant articles when they come before us, because I think that's the most relevant piece of this, and that is simply that my first approach to a warrant article is whether or not we really need to make a bylaw based on that warrant article, and then if I think whether or not I think a good law can be constructed out of the article as presented to us, And then if it seems to me that neither a bylaw is warranted nor a good policy can be made out of that particular wording of the article, that we look for another way to satisfy the proponents, whether they're internal proponents or external proponents, through a policy change or a study committee or something along those lines. And that philosophy has not changed over the last few years when I've only been a town meeting member, and it's what I would bring back to the board should I be so selected. I would say that I have no intention of running for a seat on the Board of Selectmen again. I admire you all. I'm sure you are all having a good time, but that's more of a commitment than I want to make again to public service. I'll stick to being a town meeting member. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next candidate is Dave Levy, and I want to actually clarify something because there's been some confusion. The poor guy actually runs into this a lot. We all know David Levy, who used to work for the Housing Corp of Arlington, was on our Community Preservation Committee. This is actually, I call him the new Dave Levy. He's a town meeting member from Precinct 18. He is unfortunately unable to be with us this evening. He has an illness in the family, a sick child. So he sent his regrets. He understands that there are quite a few qualified candidates as well. The only other thing I'll note is that you may remember Dave standing up at town meeting. He was the one with the bumper stickers, "I drive 25," to support the recent change in the statutory speed limit. So thank you, Dave, for your interest. The next applicant is also not a stranger to us at all. Mr. Marr, our former town council, I'd like to invite him up, and we certainly in this board, aside from those of us who have served with him, have seen him quite a bit on the, as chair of the Cable Advisory Committee, and also, just the other day, as a member of the Permanent Town Building Committee. So,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. When I first began to work with for the town, it was 1974, and the board used to meet every week. And since I worked for the town as town council and assistant town council, director of labor relations, from 1974 to 2008, if you do the math, and I kept close track, this is my 1,272nd Board of Selectmen meeting.
Rookie.
No, I have no idea, but it's well in excess of 1,000. If you thought I was keeping count, then you ought to be scared. So, but in any event, first I want to tell you why I think I would make a good selectman, and then I'm going to tell you why I think you should probably not appoint me. I started to work, as I said, in 1974. My dream all my life was to be a lawyer. Ever since I can remember high school, Tufts, and I got into BU Law, and I wanted to make a lot of money. I wanted to work as a Boston law firm or a New York law firm. Sky's the limit. I'm going to make a ton of money. And I got out of law school. The first job I got was out and working for the Minuteman companies, low man on the totem pole, and a trial department out there, insurance companies. And then Joe Purcell, who was the town council here for many years, needed an assistant. So because I knew Joe, because my college roommate was his nephew, or his uncle. I interviewed with Don Marquis, was scared to death, and I got the job, and I was thrilled, but I never thought it would be a big deal. I mean, I wanted to go to Boston. I wanted to have the big job and make a lot of money, and be a big deal. And then as the years went by, it occurred to me that although my colleagues were in there, and I had gotten some offers, that the job kind of grew on me. And over the years, I felt, I'm in the right spot. People may make more money than me. And I always thought we'd make a comfortable living as town council. Doug may disagree, God bless him, with his family. But in any event, it grew on me. And the reason that I applied for the job of selectman is the same reason I stayed as town council, and it's the same reason all of you were sitting there. And it's public service. Even though I left, retired in 2008, I've continued with the town. I think I've shown a commitment. I have a love for the town of Arlington. I have a love for public service. I think I'd be a good selectman. I know your policies. I think, and the only reason I think that I would not a good idea to appoint me, because I look at the people who have applied also. And I look at Clarissa, and I look at Annie, and I look at the other applicants. You're going to do well no matter who you appoint tonight. I appreciate the opportunity to address you, and if I don't get appointed, I'm going to continue in my capacity of serving the town of Arlington, who has served me so well. And I love the town. I'd love to be a selectman, but it's not the end of the world if I don't. I'm going to continue to do what you people do, public service.
Thank you very much, Mr. Maher. So although he is withdrawn, I did want to acknowledge that Jim Munsey had actually had applied for a position on the board. Jim's a great guy. He's a longtime driver for the Council on Aging. He's the vice chair of the Council on Aging, and as this board's liaison, I've gotten to know him a bit. To the COA, I've gotten to know him a bit, and we thank him for his expression of interest. The next candidate before us is Samantha Nugent, who has applied with an impressive healthcare background and experience with the National Association of Government Executives.
I have experience with government, and that's why I applied. I realize how grossly underqualified I am compared to everybody else. But you have to start somewhere. And I saw it pop up. I finished school back in May after 10 long years of working and going to school, so I could finally breathe and do other things. So that is why I sent in my resume. Not the only reason. I love the town of Arlington. I've always been really interested in the politics here and the policies and the public service that happens. When I moved to this state over 15 years ago, I bounced around. I didn't like the Boston area, Watertown, and then I ended up in Arlington over 10 years ago, and I knew this is where I wanted to stay and call home and raise my children. I love that it's a town. I would always want to keep it a town. It's really important. And I love the selectmen and how everything works. I'm an advocate for people, hence the reason I became a nurse and left NAGE, which I think some people are familiar with NAGE. I just saw a lot of my old coworkers this week, and they're like, oh, we know Diane and Kevin and et cetera. So I will not be disappointed when I don't get the position, but I figured it was something to start and like find some pastime, come to these meetings, stand in front of a bunch of strangers. But I love this town. I love my neighbors, and that's why I'm here, and I applied for it. So.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we move on to someone who's certainly not a stranger to us either, has served with most of the board. I did not have the pleasure of serving with her on this board, but on ATED, and she has been leading us with our Community Preservation Committee, Ms. Calista Rowe.
Hi there. I am very interested in serving. I have been voted in twice by the people of Arlington, and like John Moore and Annie, I love this town, and I'm a firm believer in helping out in civil service and public service for the public good. As you know, I'm a landscape architect. I'm a small business owner. I understand finances. I'm actually sitting as an advisor to Dean Carmen on our,
God bless you.
on our wonderful advisory committee for him. A couple of things I'd like to say. If I were appointed, I would step down from the Community Preservation Committee so that there's no conflict. I have gone over the other capacities that I serve in with Doug Hyam to make sure that there's absolutely no conflict. As you know, I have no desire to run in the spring, and I'm hoping the two women that are in front of you tonight would consider running, because I think it's a wonderful job to have, and Arlington would be well served by having more women on the board, as you know.
I'll second that. Sorry.
Anyway, it would be a pleasure to help you all out again. I consider the people in Town Hall to be a tremendously talented bunch of people, and I would love to work with them again. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And last but not least is Taryn Walsh. think, I was thinking about this, interestingly, I think every single one of us up here has had either, parents or in-laws who have served in positions of significant municipal responsibility, and we know the schooling that you gain for that. So I know that Taryn enjoys similar schooling, and I will just say that the first time I met Taryn, she was wearing a white lab coat, running the Stratton School Science Fair, and I think it was your professional experience in the motion picture industry that I was convinced you were a high-powered scientist, and you were. So, Taryn Walsh.
I have prepared a written statement because I am not experienced public speaker. So good evening, everyone. My name is Taryn Walsh. I am what you would consider a townie, and I am interested in filling the vacant selectman seat until April 2018. My father was also a townie and was an Arlington selectman for 16 years during my upbringing. He instilled in me an interest in politics from a very young age. He encouraged community involvement in all of his children, and I have done my best to have a positive impact on my community in all stages of my life thus far. I moved back to Arlington in 2003 after a 20-year career in the film industry to raise my children near family, as my husband at the time traveled 9 to 10 months of the year. I was confident that Arlington would provide my children with an excellent public education and landed in the Stratton School District, which was awarded blue ribbon recognition while my children were there. While a parent at Stratton, I was the enrichment coordinator for 7 years, requiring me to manage a budget, attend PTO meetings, write grant proposals for various programming I brought to the school, and work with teachers, parents, and students in implementing enrichment programs there. After Stratton, my children both attended Ottoson Middle School, and my son graduated Arlington High School class of 2016. My daughter is currently a sophomore there. Besides volunteering for various campaigns and doing a lot of protesting this past year, my experience includes serving on the executive board of my union, the International Alliance of Theatrical Stage Employees. We have approximately 870 members. I am currently the costume representative on the board and represent 90 costumers throughout New England. The board meets monthly and is responsible for making decisions through vote on budget, new membership, grievances, and any other business brought before us either by members or the business manager. Being involved in this union does require political involvement, as the Massachusetts film tax credit is threatened every year when Senate voting on the state budget commences. Though I am humbled by the years of experience in this room, I feel I have much to offer this town in a political capacity. As a working single mother, I was prevented from throwing my hat into the ring, but now that my children are older and more settled, I feel I can devote the time and energy necessary to do the job well. I am eager, curious, and think outside the box, bringing fresh perspective to the tasks at hand. In my job as a filmmaker, I've had to be very organized and prepared. Because time is money, there are times I have to think quickly and troubleshoot if time permits, or problem solve and keep a cool head if an immediate solution is required. I've had to work with a large range of personalities in my 30 years in the film industry, which has made me intuitive and empathetic and not quick to judge. I think these are good qualities for a collaborative civil servant. I hope to use my life experience to support my town, as my town has supported me through various phases of my life. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I just want to say, with regards to Ms. Walsh, she was one of my childhood friends. I am older than she, but we did a lot through the drama department in Fraro, which is, I used to call her Tawa, so T-A-W-A. And I remember she always does things to the tens. One time we decided we would make fortune cookies for all of our friends, and it took us about 50, 60 batches to make a decent 16 specific fortunes, and we realized you only have like 44 seconds to roll that dough, so it's good to see her once again.
Thank you. Thank you to all of the candidates, our applicants who have appeared before us and who applied. What we're now going to do is we're going to move to nominations. I'll be looking for a nomination, first and a second on nominations. If we have only one or two candidates who are nominated before us, I will then I will ask, first, after we close the nominations, if we have only one or two names before us, I will then poll the members. I'll ask Ms. Kropelka, actually, to poll the five of us here for our preference between the two. If we fail in that round, then we'll move on to a more complicated rank order preference. So I think that's all I had to say in the preface. Do we have any nominations? Ms. Mahan?
I'd like to nominate Ms. Clarissa Rowe.
There's a motion by Ms. Mahan for Ms. Rowe. Is there a second?
Second.
Who got that first? I think
Dan did.
Okay, we're going to give it to Dan. It's seconded by Mr. Dunn. Are there any further nominations? Mr.
Nominate John Marr.
Yeah. The motion for Mr. Marr. Is there a second to that nomination?
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Mahan. Do we have any further nominations? Going once, twice, three times. Do I have a motion to close nominations?
So moved.
Second.
Seconded. All those in favor of closing nominations? Aye. All opposed? Okay, I will now ask Ms. Kropelka to please poll the five members here.
Mr. Marr.
Clarissa Rowe.
Clarissa Rowe.
Ms. Rowe.
Clarissa Rowe.
Thank you very much. I think it's Ms. Rowe. Did any of my colleagues have anything they wish to add?
I thank everyone for coming and putting their names in, and I encourage the two women who are not to run for town meeting. That's a good place to start, and there's always seats available. Thank you.
Anything else? Mr. Greeley.
Just a couple of things. First of all, I wonder if the board would accept a motion for reconsideration to make it unanimous, but the other thing is, any of these five could have been there. It breaks my heart not to have brought up Taryn. We grew up together, like Mrs. Mahan was saying. She's like a sister. I'm a much older brother. And I was her father's campaign manager on a couple of his campaigns, and as well as my own father, of course. But very impressed to have met you tonight. Love John Marr, love Ann. I just hate not voting for them, but I do feel this idea that in this case, Clarissa has previously been selected by the people of Arlington, and certainly is ready to be up and running on the next vote. Thank you.
Was that a motion to?
Well, I'd like to get a signal from John Leone.
Second.
Okay.
I'll second your motion.
Moved by Mr. Greeley, seconded by Mr. Leone to reconsider. Well, any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, is there a motion now?
So I'll nominate Clarissa Rowe.
Second.
Okay, nominated by Mr. Greeley, seconded by Mr. Leone.
Move nomination be closed.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay.
Thank you, John.
Now we have to vote on
Yeah,
the,
we'll vote.
Now what?
Mrs. Kropelka has to poll us for the,
Oh,
Ms. Rowe.
Clarissa Rowe.
Clarissa Rowe.
Ms. Rowe.
undecided. Clarissa Rowe.
And my nickname for her is Rissy Rowe, just in case you're,
So-
I don't,
So I'd like to thank all of the members, thank everyone for a smooth process. Thank you, Ms. Rowe. I'm assuming you accepted, obviously, because you made your statement. I see this really as a celebration of Arlington, that so many people were willing to step forward and to serve here. I think you outlined very well that, according to the Town Manager Act, you are required to vacate the Community Preservation Committee seat. And you know the routine. If you can get sworn in, our next meeting is going to be on January 8th, and we're going to look forward to seeing you here. Did you have anything else you wanted to add? Nope, nothing more.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the support.
Thank you for putting your
Thank you,
time
sir.
in again.
I think they all deserve a round of applause.
Thank you very much.
And thank you very much, Mr. Leone.
You're welcome.
We appreciate it. Okay. Moving right along. The consent agenda. Minutes of meeting November 20th, 2017, December 4th, 2017. Vote, Chapter 268A, Section 20B3, Contract Certification, Michael Rademacher, Director, Department of Public Works. For approval, Keno to Go Monitor, 7 Star Groceries, 6 Medford Street. Request special one-day beer and wine license, 1/13/2018, at Robbins Memorial Town Hall for a private event. Angela Martano, do I have a motion?
Move approval.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Greeley, seconded by Mr. Dunn. Is there anyone here wishing to speak to any of those items on the consent agenda?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
If I could just, on agenda item number 6, just an administrative change on page 4, and it's just because I'm a stickler, could we change 4:30 to 10 p.m., just stick in 4:30 p.m., and then on page 5, same thing, alcohol serving time, 2/3 of the way down, just add p.m. after 5:30. It's just being a stickler. Thank you.
Hearing no objection. Any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The consent agenda is adopted. We now move on to item 7, request for an all-alcohol package store license, Alexander Liquors, St. Krupa LLC, 94 Summer Street, Hamal Patel and Nipa Patel co-owners. We have 4 votes before us. The first is a vote for 2018 renewal of license. The second is a vote for status of license suspension for 10 days and other conditions. The third is a vote for pledge of license, and the last is a vote for application for transfer. Mr. Heim, is there anything you would like to say to introduce this?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I could just correct 1 or 2 things. There's not a vote on the status, but I provided the board with a status update regarding Arlington Liquor's previous discipline. As the board will recall, after a failed compliance check, this board initially decided to revoke Arlington Liquor's license. That penalty or sanction was later reduced to a 10-day suspension. Arlington Liquors appealed that suspension in terms of the number of days. There were other things that they agreed to, but that is still pending. It won't be resolved before this matter comes before you. And I'm happy to answer any questions about it. But also, just so folks, the millions and millions watching, as you guys say better than I do, so folks understand, the transfer of a license and the pledge are sort of two intertwined pieces.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay.
Could I ask
Yes,
a question?
please, Mr.
So the pledge of license means the 10-day suspension goes with the license. Is that?
Not necessarily, Mr. Curo. I guess what I would say is that the pledge of license is a mechanism provided for under ABCC regulations and state law to function as a sort of form of collateral on a transfer of license, so that when someone transfers a license, one thing that they can do is the transferee basically pledges back the license that if they don't meet the financial obligations.
Right, okay.
What the point to understand, however, is that absent some action by this board or a service of the suspension goes with the license, not with the license holder. So someone has to serve this 10-day suspension unless the current license holder successfully appeals or there's some other action taken by this board.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
One last procedural question, because right now I'm of the mindset that until we resolve Mr., I'm going to say his name wrong again, Kornurski's penalty and punishment, I kind of feel like we're doing things backwards here. I'd like to get some clarity on that. He did the crime, he should do the time. I understand our end goal was to not have this particular gentleman responsible for one of our malt all liquor licenses, but is there any procedural vote we could take? Because I don't want to discourage the Patels, and I know they have counsel here representing them, and I do see Mr. Kornurski's counsel is here. Not that I guess he's required to speak, but I kind of feel like, once again, the current owner-manager of this establishment is basically just trying to dance around this issue and sneak under the radar, not take responsibility, and really thumbing his nose at the board. So is there something we can do? I mean, my vote right now would not be to renew anything, not to transfer anything, because I want to hear some clarity on that, especially since, you know, the past 2 times Mr. Krasniewski has been before us through his attorney, not his own spoken word, has admitted what he did was wrong, but yet he's still appealing that. And now it basically seems like he's just trying to do a handoff to the Patels, which it wasn't their actions that sold alcohol to a minor, as well as when Mr. Krasniewski appeared before us, the remarks that came out of his mouth about the 2 high school kids who we asked to serve in this capacity, and the remarks bordered on racial, ethnic, I can't even begin. And, you know, I do want to apologize to that young woman and young man and their families for being besmirched. So can you help me with this, or is there something we can do to kind of help maybe receive the application for the transfer? But for myself personally, I will not vote for anything until if Mr. Krasniewski was here and said, I'm dropping the appeal, I will serve the punishment that was given to me by this board and show the respect of what he did wrong, as well as, so can you help me out in that venue, in that avenue?
Yeah, Mr. Hyman, you able to, yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Ms. Mahan. Certainly, I understand the board's frustration and history with respect to this particular license holder. I don't want to speak out of turn for the council for Mr. Krasniewski, who I understand at least one of the council is present tonight. But obviously, there are a number of options. One option would be for Mr. Krasniewski to serve, you know, to drop his appeal and serve any suspension prior to an actual change of hands in ownership. Obviously, the board, you know, has its discretion to make the decision that it wants to make. I've provided a memo with respect to some of the parameters of these things. The board could try to, you know, put this matter over pending some commitment from Mr. Krasniewski to serve that suspension and not appeal. Obviously, the board has a renewal in front of them. All these things are going to be required for the Patels to take ownership and of the establishment and be able to operate it following any ABCC approval of a transfer of license, if that's what the board decides to do. So again, I guess the options in front of the board are obviously the board has to renew the license if it's going to approve a transfer. The board could seek some commitment from the council for Mr. Krasniewski to serve a suspension before an approval would be effective, or the board can, you know, try to put this matter over until it has further resolution. I want to say, though, that I'm not sure when, absent some commitment from Mr. Krasniewski, I'm not sure when the ABCC would make some sort of determination with respect to the currently pending appeal. Does that get at your question, Ms. Mahan?
I think you may have shown me an avenue. Could we afford Mr. Krasniewski's attorney? He can say yes or no. Perhaps we can really cut to the chase on this with regard to the suspension, the current appeal, what Mr. Krasniewski's plans are. And if the answer is no, that's fine, but I see that he's here.
I'm willing to do that if council's, and I will apologize to the applicants for the transfer. You understand, I think, the history of the establishment. We do. And we're trying to clarify some matters before we move forward. Are you at liberty to speak on this matter?
If you're not, that's okay.
Yeah.
Good evening. Yes, I am prepared to speak. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, and to all the members of the board. For the record, I'm Bill Kelly. I'm the attorney for Alexander Liquors. We've been here before since July on your reconsideration. Since last we were together, I think that was September meeting maybe, a deal has been struck. A deal came together at some point after that, where Mr. Krasniewski has reached an agreement to transfer his business and his license to operate that business, subject to your approval as required by statute, to these applicants before you tonight. I had the opportunity to speak before tonight with Attorney Heim, so I am here tonight for the purpose of addressing the question and anticipating you may have that, of exactly what would happen to the appeal. I've consulted with my client. I'm here with full authority to make a statement to you about that pending appeal. And I am authorized to let you know that if this transfer application, as filed, is approved, that is with completely new ownership, the only thing is that the license would stand as collateral because there's a loan being extended to help the purchase price because of the challenge, quite frankly, that you've seen before, I'm sure, with institutional lenders and traditional sources of financing just not being available. So Alex will stand there, and all he wants is a right of first refusal, for lack of a better term, a pledge of the liquor license in case he doesn't get paid. And if the application to transfer and with the pledge of license goes through, then I can let you know that as soon as the ABCC approves that as well, because there's a second approval process in Boston, as I'm sure you know, and that takes X amount of time. But as soon as the ABCC approves, we will drop the appeal. Alex has authorized me to tell you he will close and serve those 10 days, and you will never have to spend any of your resources, and he won't have to spend his resources to pursue the appeal in front of the ABCC. So with this transfer application and a pledge of license that secures payment, Alex is out of town. You've gotten I suggest what you've asked for from the beginning, which is new ownership and new management to come in and operate that. And they come in, tonight's the night for you to vet them, and they have their own counsel. But I came tonight for this express purpose, in anticipation that this question may be come up from the board. And I can tell you, as soon as the I'm authorized to tell you, as soon as the ABCC approves, Alex is prepared to close for the 10 days before the closing of the final deal. And after the closing, of course, then his license comes down to the town hall
God bless you.
for the preparation and issuance of a license in the name of his buyers.
God bless you.
God bless you.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly.
Thank you, Counselor.
So,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Grillo.
Could I ask Mr. Kelly a quick question? So is it likely the appeal will be heard before the transfer of the license by the ABCC?
no, sir.
Okay.
No, it's not. In fact,
It would come first, definitely.
this, I think, is the primary win-win for everyone. This being the transfer application with the pledge of license.
Thank you.
God bless you.
Bless you.
Further questions, Mr. Kelly? No. Thank you, Counselor.
Thank you for the opportunity.
I think it's so hot, and I have a tickle feather in my throat. That's making you sneeze, so we need a little air next time. Sorry, Mr. Chairman, I apologize, and I apologize to the Patels and their learned counsel.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Board. My name is Matthew Porter. I represent the applicant here, San Krupa LLC. With me is Hemal Patel, Nipa Patel, 50% shareholders of the corporation. Mr. Patel would be the acting manager of the store as well. Both of these individuals have liquor store experience. They purchased a store in Somerville last year that has been doing fantastically well. When this opportunity came up, they jumped on it. It gives them the opportunity to be in surrounding towns, be able to bring their expertise from their previous store into this one here today. Certainly we understand the history of the store. What makes our buyers a bit unique here is the store that we purchased in Somerville came from the current owner that you've been dealing with here. And with that store came a lot of the same issues: underage sales, loitering outside the store, an abundance of rubbish and trash outside the store, basically just an unkept, store that was not run very well. Since that time and since our clients have taken it over, they've had no issues whatsoever. The store is nice and clean, business is booming, and certainly I think they see an opportunity to be able to do that in the town here as well. We had no issues getting through the ABCC last year. These guys are fantastic applicants. It was a nice, smooth process with the state. And certainly, like I said, we understand the issues of the current ownership, but we'd like to focus on just the applicants here today and their fitness to run a store, which I think they would do very successfully in the town. So with that, I can answer any questions that the board may have, and so can Mr. and Mrs. Patel.
Thank you very much. Do any of my colleagues have questions for council or? Yes, Mr. Dunn.
What's the current store in Somerville?
It's Bayros Liquors on.
Sorry, could you
Sorry.
mind stepping?
Microphone.
Bayros Liquors.
Yeah, we welcome your conversation. You just have to come up to the microphone so everyone else can hear you.
It's a Bayros Liquors on Broadway. It's a 78 Broadway.
Okay, thank you. And so I understand that you are buying this store from Alex Konerski. The last one you bought was from Alex Konerski. I would tell you that one of the things that that we should, as a board, should be asking about and being concerned about is whether or not essentially this is just a change in nameplate. You know, like is this, or is there another relationship with the current owner that would that we should be thinking about and worrying about? So
Yeah.
I appreciate you sharing the information so far. I'd like to hear more color and more about that.
Sure, yeah, there's no relationship whatsoever, other than the fact that, you know, they had purchased the Somerville store from him and then knew that this one, you know, had come available. Beyond that, these guys are small business owners. This is how they make their living. It's a family operation. Certainly Alex has nothing to do with the operation going forward. The pledge was spoken about briefly. Essentially, like they said, is just like your counsel said, it's collateral for the loan. It's seller financing transaction. Beyond that, he has no play in the operation of the store. And to that end, I would also state, on the Somerville store, we structured the transaction the same way. Alex took back a pledge on that license. About 6 months into that transaction, we were able to obtain, you know, conventional bank financing through Rockland Trust, and Alex was out of the picture. So oftentimes it's difficult to get the financing for the applicants before they're off and running with these stores. So the hope here would be to do the same exact measure, would be to just get Alex out, you know, out of the picture, get Rockland to come in and finance the transaction. So beyond the pledge, there's no relationship with the seller whatsoever.
Can I keep going, Mr. Chairman?
Absolutely.
Changing gear, can you tell me about what policies you have about you will be having in the Arlington store about checking IDs? Like, who do you check, when do you check, how do you check? And the second question, which is very related, is how do you do the training of your employees? And what's the refreshment of training? What's the you know, what's the schedule? How do you deal with new employees? So probably two parts related there.
So I will talk about my experience with the Somerville and then talk about my plans with Arlington. So when Somerville, we took it over, I personally went to the town office and they trained me on this one. After that, they came to the store and they trained the whole staff, and they gave me the booklet that I am using to train my new employees. Employee turnaround is not that much over there. So for now, the same employees are working there and they are all trained. And regarding ID check, I don't want to put anything on assumption. So I will ID everyone, every single person who is coming into the door, because I know by assuming something, I can get into the trouble. So the best way and safest way to get out of is ID everyone. Don't assume anything on that part. On the Arlington, I'm coming to the Arlington, how I will keep training staff. I personally trained through tips, and I think we submitted that certification, and I think we will use the same mechanism to train the employees. Along with that, we will personally monitor how our employees are behaving. Training is one thing, and we need to coach them personally. So we will use both the measures to make sure that we do not see that kind of repetition that with the previous seller, whatever you see, you do not have that problem again ever in the future.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Do we have further questions, Mr. Grillo?
Yeah, so through Councilor, Mr. Patel, so managing one store is, and you've done a great job. Managing two might be more difficult. Are you going to be an on-site manager in Arlington, or are you going to go between the two stores, manager-wise?
We are a family running this business, so we have enough manpower. Nipa is my sister, and Vikas is her husband. We all put our times towards the business. So yes, I will be the face and manager. It's my responsibility, but it's a whole family will put in that time. And right now I am putting around 40 hours at the Somerville. I will put 35 hours over there and 35 hours over here at the Arlington. So I will split my time between these two stores. along with, I will be getting help from my family. Yeah.
70 hours, okay, thank you.
Do we have any further questions or comments? Ms. Mahan?
Again, my apologies for my opening remarks. They actually were not directed to you at all, and hoping you didn't get something passed on to you that shouldn't have been. And I also want to thank your attorney, Attorney Porter, for putting up with that. And some of these questions I'm just asking just sort of procedurally. I'm also a court reporter, so that will kind of explain me going after the mundane. I guess the echelon of 2/3 of my questions has to do with IDing customers who come in. I'm just wondering, and from when I worked at the ABCC, every person comes in, oh, we're going to ID everybody. And that doesn't happen in the real world. I mean, sometimes you know, old lady Mahan's 55, But my question is, when you do ID customers, how do you track and maintain that? I'm aware of 2 ways to do that. Your POS, point of sale system, anytime, you take a license ID, it's attached to that purchase and sale, and you type in S111111, or I've seen some that have sort of further high-tech, that they have something provided by the state that scans the license and keeps a written record of it, or is there another way that you do that?
There are 2 ways to do it, and we have a plans to use both the ways. One, definitely ID scanner, and by seeing the history at that location, we will. It's a must-have, and we will go for the ID scanner. I think currently they bought one and they are using it after that incident. But if it is there, we will continue using it. If it is not there, we will buy and get it installed before we take over the store. So we don't want anything like that happening from the first day. So that's second one is we will create and maintain the logs. So whatever the suspicious activities are going with the unID'd customers and all that, like underage customers, we want to keep a track of it. So when it is happened with one employee, other employees can see it, use it, review it, and I can review it mainly, and I can train my team accordingly to how to handle that situation better next time, and how we can improvise on it. So that's what my plan is.
Okay, I can just tell you what my knowledge is as of to date. What Mr. Kushnerski, and I apologize for mispronouncing his name, submitted to us is he submitted the basic POS system that he had purchased. He took the food spreadsheet that has, the different columns and, items in, chips, and he basically hit type over. This is me looking at it. My family's in the restaurant business, and I'm very familiar with these systems. And he basically entered in some numbers. So the last time he appeared before the board, he didn't have any such systems, as well as, I won't bore you with that. Myself, having been in the courts for 30 years, it looked like a recreated document. So I just tell you that if for some reason that's a big purchase and it's something you need to have discussion with, and I do not want to stop this transfer, because this is, something that I want. Secondly, one of the things that really bothered me with this particular store, because Mr. Kushnerski was managing it and the owner, as well as really saw no tracking, was the delivery service. Do you plan on also offering delivery to residences, delivery to businesses, and if you do, how are you going to affect that?
Yes, we do deliveries at Somerville, and over here we are also planning to do the deliveries. Let me give you an example. Somerville, we use the Drizzly application, and the application itself has inbuilt mechanism to scan the ID, track the ID, take the signature, everything. So that makes it very, very good and foolproof system. I am not sure there is any glitches, but to me it's a foolproof system where you are scanning the ID, you are taking the signature and everything. So we have plans to use the same application over here to make it solid.
Awesome. And then, if appropriate, and if it's something that we could ask for, and I don't anticipate ever doing that, just to let you know that if that's something that's easily to print out and demonstrate to the board, if the need should arise in the future, and I don't think it will, So I'm not asking you to do that right now, but it's just that the previous applicant told us all these things he's, been doing for the past 16 months, and it's been a nightmare, and
Yeah,
most...
I think you'll see the polar opposite here.
It sounds like it. And then this is a sort of a rhetorical question, but regarding when you have employees, managers, assistant managers, et cetera, working on-site at the store here in Arlington, am I correct to assume that with the exception of legitimate medical conditions and physician or other healthcare prescribed medication, that no drugs will be consumed by any employees, managers, co-managers at the Arlington store?
Oh, absolutely not.
Yes, absolutely not. I never want to bring anything personal to me, but I myself is a non-alcoholic person, and I very, very against use of this illegal drugs and all that. So by that I have family history. In fact, I am from the city where the Mahatma Gandhi born, so my whole city was non-alcoholic, and that's how the culture and we raised. So we are, as a whole family, we are against this whole drugs and all that.
Thank you. I mean, unless, and I only ask that because, what we've heard from so many people and what's gone on down there, and the proximity to the high school and the bike path, that, that truly was a rhetorical question. And then my last two questions that sort of merge, and I don't know if this is something that I can ask, and I think Mr. Dunn sort of touched and got most of the answer. I'm just wondering if I can ask how the Patels, through Attorney Porter or whoever, became aware of this deal. Is it something that gets posted? Did Mr. Kornerski come before them? Are they just being astute and saying, this guy's going to keep messing up? And I'm wondering if there are any other, I don't know if I can ask them if they're following any other Kornerskis in cities or towns. So what can I ask Attorney Hine?
Ms. Mahan, I think you can ask the question. I'll leave it to Mr. Porter to provide the, if he's got any objection, but I think you can ask the question. Yeah.
You can explain how you came to know Alex and.
So I and my sister, we were looking for businesses, and that's how I think he has put his business online on some site, and there are various sites we were putting a request, or whoever has listed their business, we were just submitting our inquiries. And one day Alex called, and that's where he said, I saw your request for knowing more about, and it did not strike me at all, because I was submitting a request to a lot of businesses for inquiries. And then I said, okay, we will come to you. That's where we came and we looked at it, and we liked it. And after that, we had a first meeting with him, and that's how everything started. And as he loaned some of the amount, we were in touch until we paid all this his loans and all, and we knew like he had more stores than just what we bought. And I think one day he called me and said, okay, are you interested in buying anything? I said yes, and that's how this whole Arlington thing started.
Okay. And thank you, and please don't take any of my remarks untoward or in a negative light or anything like that. It's just this has been a long, drawn-out, for me, and perhaps a nightmare, and I actually think we do see a light at the end of the tunnel. So, but thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Do either of my other colleagues have anything more? I only have one thing. It's not really so much a question, just an encouragement. Our enforcement is done in cooperation with our Youth Health and Safety Coalition here, which is our youth substance abuse prevention program. And in addition to assisting us with enforcement, they also assist with various educational outreach efforts. So I want to encourage you, one of their efforts is called Sticker Shock. They generally contact each of the package stores in town once a year. Are you familiar with this type of campaign, with the little stickers that go on the large boxes, just warning that if you're under 21, put it down, it won't be sold to you. I'd like to encourage you, if we do approve this transfer, when the coalition contacts you, to please consider participating in the program.
Sure, they absolutely will.
Yeah, thank you. Mr. Cleary.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I move approval for the 2018 renewal of this license, for the pledge of license, and also move approval for the application for the transfer, subject to all conditions as set forth.
There's a motion by Mr. Grilli. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Dunn. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Yes, Ms. Mahan.
If I could ask Mr. Grilli and also Attorney Heim, could it also be included in the motion, the statements made by Attorney Kelly regarding the, if this process should go through ABCC, would that be appropriate, and would you be comfortable with that? If it, and I want it so that if it doesn't come to pass, the Patels still, you know, get to take over. I just would like, it doesn't even have to, actually, it doesn't have to be included in the motion. If, in our minutes, if we could just have that statement as a statement by Attorney Kelly, because that in no way is the responsibility of the Patels or their counsel. So I'll take that away. I do not want to add it to Mr. Grilli's motion. I'll just ask that if...
But included in the minutes is fine.
Sorry, I should have thought that out. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? It is unanimous. Thank you very much. Welcome.
you very much
welcome
for
to
your time.
Arlington. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Porter. Thank you for
We're
choosing
really
Arlington.
nice
Good luck to
people,
all
I
of you.
swear. Good luck.
Okay. Our next order of business is our annual issuance of license renewals for approval.
Move approval.
Second.
There's a motion by Mr. Grilli, seconded by Ms. Mahan. Is there any discussion?
Don't you read them all?
What's that?
Don't you read them all?
Oh, read them
aloud?
all out loud? Yeah, yeah. No, I do not. I'll only note that there was one notation, I believe, on one of them by the building inspector, which concerning some compliance issues. So I presume that the motion is
Subject to all conditions as set forth. Sorry,
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I should have said
Thank you.
that.
Okay, so there's a motion by Mr. Grilli. It was, who seconded that? Was that Ms. Mahan? Seconded by Ms. Mahan. All those in favor? Aye. All opposed? It is unanimous. We now move on to traffic rules and orders, other business. Discussion and vote, Parmenter School lease extension. Mr. Chapdelaine.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Tonight, asking the board to consider granting authorization for me to send notice to the two tenants of the Parmenter School, noticing our intent to renew the license, or excuse me, the lease. A lot of talk about licenses. The two leases for the tenants at the Parmenter School. The reason I'm asking for it tonight is the lease with the International School of Boston requires notice be sent to them of the town's intent to renew the lease by January 1st of 2018 in order for them to be able to start a new 5-year lease July 1st, 2019. It's a long run-up, but they requested that as part of their prior lease negotiations. For the Arlington Children's Center, the ACC, we wouldn't have to provide notice until June 30th, but I could foresee some degree of uncertainty over the next 6 months, with one lease being contemplated for renewal and the other not having notice served. I'm here tonight to ask for your authorization to send that renewal because I think it is an appropriate thing to do. I've discussed it with the superintendent, Superintendent Bodie, just to get her sense of whether or not future school enrollment increases could prompt us to want to use the Parmenter School. And while she feels that that could be the case, with the expansion that was recently completed at the Thompson, the expansion planned at the Hardy, and the fact that recent growth trends are showing a little more growth in the west of town, where there is a little bit of space in the elementary schools that could possibly be shifted around, it wouldn't be likely that within this lease period we would be needing to use the Parmenter School. And even if we did need to start looking at it within this 5-year window that we're talking about, we could start planning, design, go out to bid, and then start construction after the end of the lease period. I want to be clear for anybody watching, I'm not saying that's what we are planning on doing, but in the consideration of whether or not we should extend this lease, it's not currently the opinion of either myself or the superintendent that we'd be putting ourselves in jeopardy in terms of school enrollment.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chapdelaine. Are there any motions or questions for Mr. Chapdelaine? Mr. Dunn.
So if we do this, then the earliest that we could take possession of it is the fall of '24.
Correct.
Any further questions or comments? Any motions?
Move approval.
A motion by Mr. Dunn, seconded by Mr. Grilli. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Thank you very much, Mr. Chapdelaine. Thank you for the work on that. We now move on to correspondence received. We have a request to change to existing traffic restriction at the intersection of Venner Road and Concord Turnpike, Kevin Carter, 18 Longfellow Road, via the Request Answer Center, and Town Manager Vacation Leave Buyback, Adam W. Chapdelaine, Town Manager.
Move receipt.
A motion by Ms. Mahan for receipt. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Grilli. Is there anyone here wishing to speak to either of these items? Sir.
Yeah, I'm Kevin Carter. I ran this through the Transportation Advisory Committee, and they told me, that's not how you do it. It goes to the Board of Selectmen. So then I went to the web, and I resubmitted the email that I sent to them. I don't know if you have access to the text of that, but I came tonight just in case you wanted to ask me any questions.
Well, I guess one of my things would be, if appropriate, through the chairman and town manager on the correspondence regarding Venner Road that we refer to TAC.
I think that's appropriate, yeah.
And then my second question through the chairman is.
This poor guy.
Yeah.
I mean, it's going back to that.
It's going,
Well, at least it's coming from you.
it's government bureaucracy. And then beyond moving receipt, do you need a motion regarding the correspondence we got from you, Mr.
No,
Chairman?
I think receipt is
Okay.
appropriate.
So included in the move to receipt correspondence. And my apology for giving the runaround, this is what drives my parents crazy, to also refer your correspondence to TAC.
I've always wanted to come to one of these meetings, and now I can check that off the bucket.
Got a good one, too.
It's a way of us saying we really want TAC to look, move it a little bit up the very long list of items to look at.
Okay.
So, but thank you, we really
Thanks for
appreciate
coming
that.
out.
Thank you.
Okay, any further discussion on this? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. All opposed? Okay, we actually don't have new business listed here on the.
We usually don't do it, and I make a motion to adjourn.
Okay.
Well, before we do,
Oh, okay, no,
Sorry.
I withdraw that.
I was going to ask Kevin if he would like to talk about it Thursday night.
Yeah, I have a feeling that Mr. Grilli has something.
Oh, sorry, I
Put out
apologize.
there to the.
well, I'm worried tickets are already sold out. But yeah, Thursday night is the show with the Select Tones. I know that Mr. Kiro will be there. I'm not sure who the rest of my colleagues would be able to. But this is Thursday night, 7:30 downstairs. It's a combination of the Select Tones, the audience doing sing-alongs, and the Arlington High School Jazz Band and the Magical Singers. And this is our third year, and it's, it's a holiday show, and people are certainly welcome to come. We'd love to have you.
So you're not really sold out?
Huh?
You're not really sold out?
No, we're not really.
On the stage, Mr. Dunn.
All right.
Sorry. Actually, there's no charge, I should say, for people, so we wish we would be sold out, but yeah.
Can I just note, I'm sorry, Mr. Greeley, I wanted to make it so that we could have that be a prerequisite for being considered to be appointed to selectmen. I think our performance by all the candidates would have been a really good way to judge it.
The chairman ruled I couldn't ask any questions. So it would have been my first one to all of them.
Well, maybe we won't agree to seat the new member until.
But if I may add one thing, doesn't the chamber look great with the paint job
It
that's been
certainly
done?
does.
And the rug is going to be replaced shortly soon. And as you know, we're going to eventually, on this wall, for the Selectmen's Awards, we're going to get some plaques up there. So, thank you, sir. Happy holidays, everybody.
Thank you. Anyone else have anything burning? Okay. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
To adjourn.
We have a motion by Ms. Mahan. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Grilli. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? The next scheduled meeting of the Board of Selectmen will be on January 8th, 2018. Happy Hanukkah, Merry Christmas, and Happy New Year, everyone.